Now say to the same person, I'm so glad that I'm not you. Do you know there are 773,692 words in the Bible? If you've got yours with you, please feel free to quickly check it out. The Bible is not any old book, it's an instruction book. Those letters, B-I-B-L-E, stand for Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth. It comes in two parts, part 1 and part 2. Us Christians call it the Old Testament and the New. Today I've handpicked 25 of my all-time favourite words just for you. They are found in part 1 in the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 25. These are for you this morning. These are for you. These are for you. These are for you. These are for me. I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. The great locust, the young locust, the other locust, and the locust swarm. The title of this talk this morning is Restoration, Restoration, Restoration. No, I didn't say relocation, relocation, relocation. I recently walked through the gates of the high security Her Majesty's prison. This felt strange for me because for most of my life, I've tried to avoid going into prison. But it seems these days, I'm doing all that I can to get back in. The female prison officer who searched me, she had a broken nose, she wasn't wearing any makeup, and she smelled a cheap man's aftershave. Have you got the picture? As she patted me down, it brought back the memories that I've got of when I was searched on the inside as an inmate. And I'm going to be honest, I still felt guilty. I don't know why though, because my reason for going into prison this time was to speak to the lads. After I'd spoken, there was a round of applause from the lads, from some there, from the drugs agency, and also the prison officers. And I'm going to be honest, I felt good because it had gone well. But then I noticed a prison officer coming walking towards me, clutching a copy of my book close to his chest, with his finger pointing to the title, with his face all screwed up. He wasn't happy. He said, I believe that the other half of this sentence is true, you know. I believe that once you're an addict, you're always an addict. Well, I looked at him and smiled. It wasn't difficult because it was only small. And I said, yes, mate, in some cases that can be true. But in my case, it's not. You see, I was once an addict, and now I'm clean. That's why I've called my book, Once an Addict. He didn't know what to say, and he walked away with his tail between his legs. Think about this. If God can restore me all the way back from 15 years of hardcore drug addiction, he certainly can restore somebody like you. When those words were originally spoken in Joel chapter 2 verse 25, God's people were in a bit of a mess. You see, God had asked them to live their lives a certain way, but instead of living their life God's way, they lived their life their own way, so they had to live with the consequences of those choices. But despite that, God still promised to restore them back to the place where they once were. And what God was willing to do for a whole community of people way, way back in the day, He's able to do for one individual today. I've been a Christian just a few weeks, and the woman in the church gave me a greetings card. The kind of thing that women do. It's not the kind of thing that men do, if you know what I mean. And I opened the greetings card, and on one side were some personal words from this lady. I thought, oh, isn't that cute? And on the other side of the greetings card were the words out of Joel chapter 2, verse 25. I read them. I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. I thought, what's all that about locusts? I read it again. I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten, the great locust, the other locusts. What's all this about different locusts? Didn't make sense. I read it again. I'll restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. The great locust, the young locust, the other locust, and the locust swarm. And all of a sudden the penny dropped. Boom. That each of those 4 different types of locusts represented to me 4 different things that have been damaged in my life, because I too have been living life my way rather than God's way. You see, in the Bible, locusts represent damage and destruction. And God said to me then, Barry, don't worry, it's payback time. And since that day, my life has been one exciting journey of restoration, more restoration. And I know there's even more restoration to come because I'm a work in progress. My road to completion is always under construction. You ask my wife. What things can God restore in your life? Here are 4 things that God can restore for you. Number 1, God can restore your confidence. He can. When I was a little kid, I was oozing with confidence. And then as a teenager at school, my drug of choice was drink. I started to drink and eventually I started to smoke cannabis and take LSD and amphetamine. And I noticed as I got into what we call today recreational drugs, my confidence levels dropped. And then as I grew a little bit older, I got into the harder drugs and I became a heroin addict. And I noticed as I got into heroin, my confidence levels dropped even more. I would try to gloss over this by using even more drugs, but the more drugs that I used, the less confident I became. I was living in Salford in Manchester at the time, above a greengrocer's. And the roof of the greengrocer's was flat, and it was adjacent with my living room window. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was in bed, and I heard a commotion in my living room. I thought, what's that? So I got out of bed, and I legged it into the living room. Raise your hand if you leg it. Any here bomb it? Put your hand up if you bomb it. Any posh ones who like to trot? And I legged it into the living room, and there was a guy stood on the flat roof of the shop with a big paving stone in his hands, and he was smashing in my window. Remember, I've got no confidence. What am I going to do? So I legged it down a flight of stairs, and there were some other lads outside, but I managed to swerve them and get away. And in those days, I had a free train pass and a free bus pass because of my mental health issues that was drug-induced. And I was able to go anywhere in Greater Manchester for free. So I got on a bus, got into the city centre, went to Victoria Station in Manchester, and I looked at all the places where I could go on a train for free. Place called Rochdale. Still in Greater Manchester, but out in the sticks. So I went and found the Yellow Pages. Who remembers them? Before Google. And there was a Salvation Army hostel in Rochdale. So I rang them up. Yes, we've got a place. So I went to Rochdale on the train, checked into the Salvation Army hostel, and I got kicked out of the hostel for having a fight with a Scouser. I won. And then I was in another hostel, Leopold Court, that was run by the council. That was dead posh, en suite. I thought, oh, I've arrived. And then I got a little flat down a cul-de-sac. Plastic windows, housing association, ground floor, view of a football field. I thought, this is that country lifestyle that you see in Emmerdale Farm I've been after. And throughout a 10-day period, I met 3 people, all of them were Christians. One of them invited me to church, so I went. They were waving flags around and banging tambourines. It was like the opening of the Olympics. Then the guy gets up to speak. He says, we believe in a God who can heal. If you've got any issues, come to the front. I thought, what have I got to lose? And I got out of my seat and I walked to the front and I was prayed for. And God flicked the switch on. I had a light bulb moment. And lots of things changed from that point on, but one of the main things that changed is that confidence that I'd lost through drug use came back. You see, there are many things in this life that can take away our confidence. For me, it was drugs. For you, it might be something else. Listen, I'm here to tell you this morning, it doesn't matter what it is that's taking your confidence away, God can restore it. There's a Proverbs in God's instruction book that says, the Lord will be your confidence. How can that be? Well, when you exercise your faith in God, you get a confidence that comes directly from God. The Bible tells us that such confidence is ours through Jesus Christ. Who is Jesus Christ? God with skin on. What things can God restore in your life? He can restore your confidence. Number 2, God can restore your self-esteem. Do you know, I think I've got the best job in the world. It won't suit everybody, but I like the idea that I get to travel full-time throughout the United Kingdom. I was only in Scotland 2 weeks ago, miles away in the northeast of Scotland. I was on Shetland for a weekend doing some stuff. So I get to travel. And then I come to beautiful places like Plymouth. You can imagine that I meet a lot of people. I like that part of it. But you'll be surprised how many people that I meet who have got low self-esteem. There's lots of reasons why somebody may have low self-esteem. It could be that when you were young, you were told, you're hopeless, you are. You're never going to make anything of yourself. It could be that you've been in a relationship and that relationship has been abusive and it's not your self-esteem. For 6, listen. When you exercise your faith in God and you give God consent to come in, you start to put a price back on your own head. You start to value yourself and you get back your I am a somebody. I am a somebody mentality. Let me use the words of the great civil rights leader and pioneer, Martin Luther King. He said, I've come back to tell you that you are a somebody. See, in God's eyes, everybody in this room is a somebody. It doesn't matter what you're going through right now. When God looks at you, he sees you as a somebody. It doesn't matter how you feel about yourself today. When God looks at you, he sees you as a somebody. It doesn't matter what you look like. That's good news for some of you men. When God looks at you, he sees you as a somebody. I was invited to speak in a church in a place called Accrington. I get invited to all the glamorous places. I've got a friend called J. John. He was in Hawaii. Accrington. The roughest church in the whole of Europe, it must be. It was rough. Really rough. I remember turning up and parking my car in the car park, and I was met by 4 security guards who chaperoned me to the church building. They did. There was bouncers on the door of the church. Oh, it was rough. I remember walking into the church and I was sat at the front like I have been this morning, and they started to sing, and I looked back at the sea of faces. You should have seen them. Skinheads, cauliflower ears, broken noses, tattoos on the foreheads, and that was just the women. Do you know what I said? It doesn't matter what you look like today. When God looks at you, he sees you as a somebody. You're a somebody in the eyes of God. He values you more than you can ever imagine. You may have a face that only your mother can love. Luke. Joke. Here's a good look at any ladies. God values you. Do you know, I spent so many years of my life as a nobody. But my Bible tells me that I'm a child of God. My Bible tells me that I'm a member of God's very own family. My Bible tells me that I'm his. His, the creator of the universe, his masterpiece. See, I'm a somebody in the eyes of God. You see, I've started to put a price back on my own head. I've started to value myself, and I'm seeing myself how God sees me. See, the problem with us is sometimes when we look into the mirror, we see ourselves as a Mark 1 Ford Escort on a scrap heap, rusty wheels, bald tyres, decaying bodywork, clapped out engine, on that scrap heap with no petrol. That's how we see ourselves sometimes when we're looking into the mirror. That's not how God sees us. He sees us as a brand spanking new Ferrari. Chrome wheels, slick tyres, gleaming red bodywork, customised engine on the forecourt of a car showroom with no petrol. You see, all the potential is there. But what we need is the petrol of God in our life, the Holy Spirit. And when he comes in, all that potential that's laid dormant for years comes alive. And then we start to see ourselves how God sees us. We start to value ourselves. And we put a price back on our own head. You're a somebody in the eyes of God. You're a somebody. He values you more than you could ever imagine. I got invited to speak at the Lord Mayor of Manchester's prayer breakfast. The invitation came by letter. I was cordially invited to be the keynote speaker. I had to Google that word. Oh, I turned up that morning. It was all dead posh, it was. There's a table over here with the Lord Mayor of this part of Manchester sat with her bling round her neck, and her crew sat round the table, and there was a table over here with the Lord Mayor of that part of Manchester with his bling round his neck, and he had his crew, and there was a table over here, and all these different mayors, and there's a table over there with the police sat round it. I wasn't going to sit at that table. I may be changed, but I'm not that changed. Only joking. And at the end, I had my book set up, and it just so happens that my books are set up today at the back. For your information, I run a charity that I set up 20 years ago. We set up a project to provide a copy of my book, Once an Addict, to every single prisoner in the United Kingdom. There's 84,000 prisoners behind bars in the UK. To date, we've sent 46,000 copies of that book out free of charge. 46,000. And there's one small way that you can support that, one small way. For every one copy of Once an Addict you buy, we then send 2 into prisons on your behalf. So you're buying 3, but you're giving 2 away. That's how it works. There's some other bits on the table, DVDs, CDs. All the proceeds from that, of course, go into the charity and go into my pocket. But that is earmarked, that's in the column for our prison ministry because we don't get any funds for our prison ministry. I also speak in 40 prisons a year, and the funds we get from that helps us do that work in prisons. But on that particular day, I think I put the prices up because I knew the mayors were going to be there, and they've got a few quid. Well, it did cross my mind, but I thought I better not. And at the end, they were coming at the back and they'd set a little table up for me to sit at and to do a little book signing. And the mayors were queuing up with the bling around the neck and asking me to sign my book. And as I was signing each book, I was thinking, you may have that bling around your neck, but you know, I'm equal with you because I'm a child of God. I'm one of God's boys now. You see, now I'm seeing myself how God sees me. I'm not seeing myself as a Mark 1 escort. You have low self-esteem, start to see yourself how God sees you. You start to put a price back on your own head and you'll get back your I'm a somebody mentality. What things can God restore for you? He can restore your confidence. He can restore your self-esteem. And number 2, God can restore your relationships. There are 2 kinds of relationships that God is concerned about. The first is the vertical one that you have with Him. And the second is the horizontal relationship that you have with people. One day this guy came to Jesus. He said, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. That's the amplified version. Jesus was sat down. He said, Jesus, which is the greatest commandment? And instead of giving one of the commandments, Jesus gave 2 to summarize the 10. He said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind is the first. And the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. So that's the main relationship that God is concerned about. It's always been the same since the beginning of the time. If we go right back to the original days in the Garden of Eden, Adam and God had a tight relationship going on. They were tight in the garden. One day, Adam and God was walking in the garden. And Adam said, God, why have you made Eve so pretty? And God said, because I wanted you to like her. And then he said, but God, why have you made her so stupid? And God said, because I wanted her to like you. They were in the garden, and God said, you can eat of any of these trees, except for that one tree, because that one tree will give you knowledge of good and evil. But they couldn't resist. Sound familiar? And they had to eat off that one wrong tree, and it was at that point when all of life's faults, flaws, and failures spilled out into the world. That's why Jesus had to come to mop up the mess that they made. I love Christmas, do you? 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, God became a man. Wow. His name was Jesus. He came to this earth. He lived on this earth till he was 33. And at the age of 33, he allowed himself to be nailed to a cross to take the rap for you. His final words on that cross was, it is finished. At that point, the temple curtain was ripped. You look in God's instruction book, that was symbolic to the relationship that was broken in the garden being restored. So from that point on, people like you, and you, and you, even me, could get to know God in our knower. We can know him in a personal way. See, God isn't fussy. It is finished. Where are you at with your relationship with God? Do you know him and you know her? Do you know about him? Or do you know him? Are you searching for him? Have you given it much thought? Are you just going through the motions? You can get to know him. Last night, 16 people. And there was a smaller group here last night as well, responded because they wanted to get to know God. Not just know about God, to get to know him, so you know him personally. But he's also concerned about the relationships that you have with people. And I've learned this through experience, that once you get that one right with God, he then gets busy and he starts to build the bridges with those right relationships that need to be restored in your life. And I use the word right because not every past relationship is going to be restored. It's meant to be left in the past. But what he doesn't restore, he will replace with a right relationship that's part of your future. But he will restore those right relationships. I saw him do this with me and my dad. Me and my dad, when I was growing up, we were tight. My dad was from Yorkshire. He was born in Yorkshire. A mining community. His dad was a miner, his brother was a miner, and I seen a picture of his mother and she could have been a miner too. Got drafted into the army, got stationed in Salford. That's where he met my mum. They started to go out when he left the army, and they moved to Yorkshire, lived there for 8 years, and then they moved back to Salford in Manchester. That's where I was born. But we were tight growing up. But then I got into drugs. I remember him saying to me, of all the things in the world you could have turned out to be, and you've turned out to be a blankety blank blank, he wasn't happy. Blankety blank smackhead, you're not my son anymore. Disowned me, we didn't speak for 7 years. I was okay with that, because it gave me a license to carry on doing what I was doing and do even more of it. And then we started to speak, but it wasn't comfortable. And then I became a Christian. I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell my dad. So I got in my car, I drove to Salford, parked it in the street, walked across the road into the front room. My dad was sat in his armchair with his tracky bottoms on, reading the newspaper and watching the news at the same time. He always did that. I sat on the floor next to the dog in front of the settee. I said, Dad, I've become a Christian. Do you know when you know somebody well, you know what they think, they don't need to say anything? Oh no, what drugs is he on now? And then I said, Dad, one day I'm going to write a book. Here we go again. He's tripping. When you've broke somebody's trust, it's your job to be intentional at building that trust back up. So I started to build that trust back up. I went off to Cliff Bible College. Dad, will you come to my graduation? He came to my graduation. Well, he was kind of there. He was sat at the back smoking roll-ups for most of it, but he was there. Then I started to travel to different parts of the world, and wherever I was speaking, I'd ring my dad, because I'm building that trust back up. And then I went through the ordination process with the Assemblies of God. Dad, are you coming to my ordination? Yeah, I'll come. He came with my mum. He made a few days of it, and had a few pints the night before and the night after. But he was there. Then I got married to Tina. She's from London. He was there, building that trust back up. 2009, I got a phone call from my brother. You need to go and see me, your dad, our dad, Kev, he's had a fall. What do you mean he's had a fall? Well, he's had this fall, he's in bed, okay. So the next day I went round, went into the front room. He wasn't sat in his armchair. Where are you, Dad? I'm up here, son. He was in bed, he never stayed in bed, my dad. After 6:30, 7 o'clock, he was always up. What's happened? He said, I keep falling. I'll be all right, though. I've got vertigo. Dad, go and see a doctor. No, I don't want to go and see a doctor. I'm all right. He didn't like seeing doctors. He's an old-fashioned man, you know. Got another phone call from our kid 2 days later. My dad's had a fall. Went round to see him. Dad, go and see a doctor. No, I'll be all right. Then I get another phone call a few days later. My dad's in hospital. Went down to Hope Hospital in Salford. Chatting to my dad while he sat on his bed, and this doctor came out. She's about 15 years of age. At the most. She said, Tom, we've done some tests. Can we have a private word with you? He said, well, you can say anything that you need to say in front of me lads, because Kev was there as well, my brother. She says, okay, but we just need to go. So they took us into a room. He said, Tom, you've got a brain tumour on the right side of your brain. As I've learned, some of you will know that the right side of your brain controls the left side of your body. And your left side's giving in because of the tumour. How long have we got to live? Tell me straight. A few months. That was tough. So wherever I was speaking, when I was on the way or on the way back, I'd call in to see him. Late hours one morning, it was probably early hours one morning, late one night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I walked through the door. I think I'd been coming home from South Wales. And we'd put a little bed in the back room because we couldn't get him upstairs by now. And he was in the hallway in his wheelchair. As soon as I walked through the door, I don't know how it was timed, as soon as he saw my face, he says, can you help me find this blankety blank God of yours? I said, I can, Dad. He said, have you helped many? I said, yeah, just a few. I'm going to come back in the morning, Dad. This is my dad. And I spoke at some big events, Spring Harvest and all that, and it's never about the size of the crowd for me. Because my biggest audience was an audience of one. His name was Tommy Woodward, my dad. I went back that next day, I walked through the front door, went into the back room, got him out of his bed, put him in his wheelchair, wheeled him through, put him in his armchair. I couldn't get his leg over the side because he wasn't that well. And I knelt at the side of the armchair and I grabbed my dad's arm and said, Dad, I want you to pray this prayer with me. He put his arm on my arm and he said these words, I love you, son. That's the one time my dad's ever said that to me. That's not a criticism. From the mining family, they don't talk like that. And then he said, I'm proud of you. My dad, proud of me. You see, I got that one right with God. Then I was intentional about building that trust back up. And that was it. They were his final words to me. He died 2 days after that. Where will my dad be now? He'll be sat in his armchair with his tracky bottoms on, reading the newspaper and watching the news at the same time. And when sports starts, that's it. You see, I got that one right. You see, God will restore those right relationships in your life, but he won't restore those wrong ones. What things can God restore for you? He can restore your confidence. He can restore your self-esteem. He can restore broken relationships. And number 4, God can restore your health. There's a verse in God's instruction book that says, I will restore your health and heal your wounds. He can heal problems with our minds. Do you know, I suffered from amphetamine psychosis. I explained this last night. 9 years I heard voices for. 9 years. And I went to that church that Sunday morning. I was prayed for. And the voices went. I haven't heard voices since. Until I got married to my wife 15 years ago. I'll restore your health and heal your wounds. And it can heal problems with our minds. It can heal our bodies. Some of you can testify to that. It can heal disorders. I've got a friend, Shell Perris, who's a singer. In fact, we have been down this neck of the woods on tour with Authentic Media. Because she had music out with them at that time when we were doing the tours. She was anorexic at school. She was given 5 weeks to live. And she met a Christian at school who invited her into the Christian Union. The Christians prayed for her. She got healed. Now, years later, she's had 4 children. She doesn't look anorexic anymore. She's not bothered how she looks because God's restored her health and healed her wounds. See, God can restore us. He can heal us from problems with our minds. It can heal our bodies. It can heal disorders. Listen, Jesus was the healer, and he still is the healer. That time when Jesus was in the temple, and there was a guy there with a deformed hand. Jesus said, stretch out your hand. The Bible tells us that he stretched it out, and it was completely restored. It was actually arthritis, but it was healed. Jesus was the healer, and is still healing people today. 25 of my all-time favorite words out of God's instruction book. Joel chapter 2, verse 25. These are for you today. These are for you. These are for you. These are for me. I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. The great locust, the young locust, the other locust, and the locust swarm. The title of this talk has been Restoration, Restoration, Restoration. Please stand. If you can, if you're able, that's, if you're not able to, that's fine. Stay down. Listen up. The main relationship that God is concerned about is the relationship that you have with him. And it could be that you're here this morning, you're a guest, you've been brought by a friend, you didn't know what to expect. It could be that you've been coming to this church for a long time. And I can understand why you will come to this church. If I was in this area, I'd probably come to this church. Great music, lovely people. I'm sure the messages are great. I can understand why you're coming. But you could be coming to this church, but you've never given God consent to come into your life. You've never been told you need to give him consent. I was speaking in Macclesfield, another glamorous place. And at the end, I was at the back with my books, and this guy came up to me and said, I've been coming to this church for over 18 months. And tonight, the pennies dropped that I needed to do something to give God consent to come in, and I've done that. And something's happened. I feel different. That could be you. It could be that you're part of the youth group or young adults in this church. And you're coming to this church because you're connecting with young people and you're enjoying that, and that's great. Keep coming. But as an individual, you have never given God consent to come in. It could be that you're an older person. You're coming to please your spouse. Thank you. What about you? Do you know God in your knower? Don't leave it like my dad did 3 days before he passed away. So there might be some of you who come here, you've never given God consent to come in. And that's the first group. The second group of those people, you've started your Christian journey at some point. You may have become a Christian really young. You may have prayed a prayer of commitment a few years ago. At some point in the past, you've prayed a prayer of commitment. You've given your life to God. But you know that right now, if you're honest, you're not really cutting it. Listen, there's no condemnation for you. The Bible tells us that. But what I'm here to say to the second group, pray this prayer. Get back on track. God will forgive and forget. And as you leave this place, you can just crack on with the rest of your Christian journey. So there's two groups of people going to pray this prayer with me. The first group, those people, you've never prayed a prayer. You've never given God consent to come in. And the second group of people are those people, you have prayed a prayer at some point, but you're not living how I want you to live. You're going to pray this prayer. You're going to get back on track. Everybody else, you make up the third group. You're going to pray to encourage the first group and the second group. Are we ready? All three groups. Repeat after me, phrase by phrase, out loud. Dear God, I come to you today, and I admit that I'm not perfect. God, I ask that you forgive me for all my faults, for all my flaws, for all my failures. God, I ask that you wipe my slate clean, because right now I'm opening my door and I'm giving you consent to come in. Sit in my driving seat. Take hold of my steering wheel. And keep the process going of restoration. Restoration. Restoration in me. While our heads are bowed and looking around, if you've prayed that prayer, you're part of the first group or the second group. I'm going to ask you to park your pride outside, but if that's you, raise your hand so I can see it. You're part of the first group. Keep your hands raised so I can see it. Keep your hands raised. We've got one over here and two. Anybody else? You're part of the first group or the second group. We've got two people in here. Anybody else prayed that prayer? Put your hands down. There's more.